If you're looking for part-time job, one of these income opportunities that pops to the mind is driving for Uber or Lyft. Now on the surface, it sounds really nice, right? You make your own hours, you are your own boss, and you actually decide how much income you want to make. So if you're gonna drive more hours, obviously more income you're gonna make. And then if you drive less, obviously your income will be lower, but then you will have more free time. So far that sounds good, right? But before you actually decide to drive for Uber, especially part-time, there is few things you really need to know to make sure that this is actually worth your time. Before we jump to it, just a full disclaimer, I was a car service driver in Brooklyn, New York for 3 years, plus I have few friends actually driving for Uber, so I definitely have enough experience to share in this video. So to understand the full picture, how much income you can actually make, especially for the part-time, first let's break the basic expenses that are required to even drive for Uber, and there is 2 different kinds of expenses. The first group of expenses is the steady expenses that are not related to how much you drive, but are necessary to even start driving. So starting from the largest expenses, and keep in mind I'm talking about New York City. Obviously these prices might be different in your area, but let's go to the examples. First you need the TLC insurance, and yes, this is totally different than your regular insurance for the car. Obviously you will carry passengers, therefore it's more expensive. And on average in New York, this is about $600 a month. It could be higher or a little bit lower. Second, and this is definitely the big one, you actually need a car. Now it's great if you have your own car. Obviously that car cannot be too old. And that car has to be able to pass TLC inspection. And it has to be able to pass it every 4 months, keep in mind. But if you don't have good enough car, and let's say you need to buy the car, just for average mid-size sedan for example, these payments are gonna be also $600 a month. Now there is smaller expenses too, for example your TLC license, and this is one-time fee in the beginning at least, which is on average between $250 and $500. Then every 4 months $75 inspection fee, and then you also have to keep the car clean, so you would have to probably wash it at least once a week with the vacuum and etc. And in New York that's on average $30, which means $120 a month. Now if you're actually already driving for Uber, obviously there is gonna be another expenses. So first one would be the gas for the car, and on average 10-day shift, that would be about $40. It could be more, but since a lot of these cars are hybrid right now, this is the average. Besides the gas for the car, you have actually the biggest expense, which is the Uber fee. And on average, at least in New York, that's about 25%. And yes, that's 25% from every single dollar you will book for your entire day of driving. Now there is also car maintenance fees. However, if the car is new, you're not gonna really have these expenses, at least in the beginning. And unfortunately, if you drive, especially in bigger city, every day or even part-time, sooner or later you will catch some tickets. They pretty much unavoidable. Whether it's red light camera ticket, speeding ticket, or even parking ticket for that matter. And not even to mention bus lane only ticket, because your customers want you to drop them off at that specific spot. So now with all that being said, let's compare the full-time driver versus part-time driver. And for this example, we're gonna assume that the driver is driving for 22 days a month for Uber, and then the part-time driver is gonna drive for 10 days a month, or it could be 15 to 20 partial days, but still for the total of 10 days a month, approximately 10 hours a day. So now with that, let's say each driver on average books $350 of trips. That's only on average, of course, per each day. So let's start from the full-time driver. In this situation, the $600 monthly insurance is spread for 22 days, which equals $27.27 a day. And same exact story with the car payments. That's also $27 a day. The 25% Uber fee is gonna be $87.50. And then additional $40 a day for the gas. Now, since these are the most common expenses, I'm not gonna talk about the maintenance much because that can vary. And the potential tickets, because obviously some drivers get more, some less. However, keep in mind, if you're driving all day, there is always some possibility of getting the ticket because we all make mistakes. So for the full-time driver, after all these expenses, he makes about $167 a day, and if we're counting 10 hours a day, that means that this driver makes less than $17 an hour, and keep in mind you still have to pay the taxes from it. Now let's focus on the part-time driver. So same situation here, he books $350 a day, just to compare apples to apples, of course. Now here is where the big change comes in, because now the TLC insurance, when you spread the $600 TLC insurance for 10 days only, that's $60 a day, and same with the car payments. Of course the Uber fee will be the same, and the gas as well, because we're still driving full day, except for 10 days a month, not 22. So now after all of these expenses, you are only left with $102.50. So it equals about $10 an hour, which is actually less than minimum wage in some states. And again, you will still have to pay taxes from it. Now I know some of you is gonna say, Chris, I saw this Uber driver on YouTube, and this guy says he booked $250 in 4 hours. And yes, sometimes it can happen, especially in cold days, or if some particular area is surging on the Uber app, and you're gonna get 1.2 or 1.4 times the regular trip. So sure, in this situation you can make more money, but then again, that's definitely not the average. And think about this also. Let's say you catch some good trip to the airport with the customer, the price is $50, and then you start driving, and all of a sudden there is some huge crash on the highway. Now your trip is already booked, you can't charge any more because that's the price, $50, right? But yet you spend extra 45 minutes to an hour because of the heavier traffic, and that's not very unusual. These things will happen. So to answer the main question of this video, is part-time Uber even worth it? I think that will depend on every individual person. However, if you're not gonna drive a lot, maybe you're gonna drive just occasionally, couple of hours here and there, then because of the steady monthly expenses that every Uber driver has to pay, you might not have that much income left for yourself. So you decide. I hope this video gave you some clear picture if you want to drive for Uber or not, especially part-time. And something tells me you will like this video next, so make sure to check it out. And as always, thank you for watching.